Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Ties That Bind, Book 2, by D.A. Young. Narrated by J.F. Harding and Mari. Chapter 1. Chatham, New Mexico. The clicking and whirring noises interrupted Billy's soundless sleep, prompting her to slowly blink her eyes open as she tried to comprehend what was happening. The indentation on the pillow next to her was the only confirmation that Billy hadn't been alone. Where was Ransom? Click. Whir. Click. Billy squinted sleepily when she located Ransom across the room, with that damned camera hiding his face. Again. I should have known. Her generous mouth poking out, she pulled the bedsheets over her head. Babe, enough with the pictures already. Don't you have enough? Please come back to bed. Ransom smiled at her sulking. The pout was a childish gesture, but of course his fancy pants managed to turn it into a seductive one that beckoned him to steal a taste of her luscious, ripe mouth that she knew just how to work for him alone. His body tightened with anticipation at the thought. I thought I made it clear to you that I'd never have enough of you, Billy, he replied, grinning wolfishly. Ransom focused his lens on her red nails and nutmeg complexion, a striking contrast against the snow-white sheets, and snapped away. You never heard the saying, you can never have too much of a good thing? Billy lowered her shield slightly to reveal rumpled black waves tumbling over her forehead, slashing black eyebrows, and those luminous orbs that sucker-punched Ransom every time she trained them on him. They were onyx inkwells that swirled with her emotions. Presently, they danced with laughter as she peeked at Ransom playfully, head cocked to the side, silently appraising him. Those enchanting eyes were like a physical caress that forced Ransom's libido into overdrive. He still didn't know how he'd been lucky enough to wind up with this gorgeous woman, but Ransom planned to never let her go. Fuck soulmates. They were on some deeper shit, and he would go to war with anyone suicidal enough to disrespect or get between them. Billy's love and support made Ransom a better man. She believed in him and allowed him to be who he was, a man desperately in love with her, but still a ruthless enforcer for the Immortals MC. When he was with her, club business and worries ceased to exist, and Ransom was determined to keep it that way. His baby didn't need to know all the grim details of his job. Billy just needed to know that he'd take lives before he let any harm come to her. Ransom smiled as she lowered the bedsheet further, revealing the delicate pendant with the diamond-flaming skull emblem hanging from her slender neck. Normally it was tucked underneath her clothing, but when it was just the two of them, his poor Billy often found herself in the precarious position of being naked, wearing only the jewelry he'd given her. The platinum pendant nestled perfectly between her lush breasts, which were one of the many favorite things he adored about his old lady. The chain was impressive, but in no way did it rival the rock on her left hand. Ransom had refused a wedding ring, opting for ink instead to proclaim to the world that he belonged to his fancy pants. While Ransom insisted on jewelry for his wife, Billy had opposed it vehemently. Just never stop loving me, she'd insisted with a stubborn tilt of her pointed chin. That's all I need. You and your love, Ransom Lawson. I don't need expensive decrees for the world to know we belong to each other. Bullshit. Of course she'd say that. Billy didn't need or want anything of monetary value because she was a fucking heiress to a wine empire, not to mention independently wealthy in her own right. Well, it must not be true if you're all the way over there and I'm in this big bed all by myself, she teased, wiggling her brows. She blew him a kiss as one hand slipped beneath the sheet. Come back to bed, my love. You're sorely missed. Ransom set the camera down and approached her with purposeful intent. His mission? To continue his quest of ruining her repeatedly for other men. Billy smiled adoringly at him, and, per usual, Ransom was humbled by the glowing expression of love on her face. Intense feelings of pride sweltered inside of him when Billy allowed him to peel her cover away, unveiling her rounded belly. She didn't have too much longer to go now, and he was excited to learn if their first child would be a daughter or son. Billy insisted on the sex being a surprise. And because Ransom could never fucking deny her anything, he went along, even though she insisted he could find out and just not tell her. Smiling at his odd expression, She wrapped her arms around his neck and drew him down over her. Carefully, Ransom arranged himself between her thighs. "Tell me again, wild thing," he ordered gruffly, pressing a kiss to her belly. They grinned when he got a vigorous kick in response.
"If you insist."
Billy twirled a lock of his hair around her finger, softly exhaling her truth as his lips found hers.
"We love you, husband."
Ransom's eyes flew open at the insistent pounding on his door. His heart was thundering with a frenzied urgency, threatening to burst through his chest. He bit back a stream of profanity, pissed at the disruption of his dream. A dream so sweet and beautiful that sometimes Ransom wanted it more than his next breath. Simultaneously, he struggled to breathe and calm his racing heart. Christ, he was a fucking mess. That's what Willamina Billy Stanton had done to him. Even after leaving Ransom high and dry months ago, she was still an intricate part of him, and he was now foolishly realizing that she always would be. Billy stole into his dreams nightly, seducing him not just with her high-octane presence, but a happily ever after that Ransom wanted badly enough to kill for it. He despised himself for being so weak, and Billy even more because of it. It wasn't enough that she'd abandoned him, leaving Ransom a shell of his former self. It was the fact that he couldn't move past her, no matter how hard he tried, with countless faceless women. The pounding on the door continued. Ransom chose to ignore it. He already knew who was on the other side, harassing him at the ass crack of dawn.
Shouldn't you get that?"
A timid voice squeaked in his left ear. Ransom jerked back in surprise and turned in its direction. He grimaced at the timid brunette occupying his bed, mascara crusting her nervous brown eyes.
"Or do you want me to?"
Damn. Ransom thought she'd left a long time ago, which meant that she'd broken his cardinal #1 rule. No staying after fucking. He scratched at his beard thoughtfully. Maybe she didn't know. Then again, how could she? They'd only met last night. His memories were fuzzy around the edges. On his life, he couldn't recall if they'd even had the mandatory discussion. What exactly did happen last night? Ransom remembered celebrating with his brothers at Club Flex because he'd been selected by his father and Prez, Slade, to help out a Northern California chapter of their MC.
"I'll get it. I'm sure it's just shakes."
This new voice came from Ransom's right, surprising the fuck out of him again. He twisted his head in that direction and saw Minnie, a buzzed-cut blonde that he'd been fucking with regularly for over a month now, lying next to him with her eyes closed. Well, hell. She was a stripper at Flex with a banging body that was all natural. Slowly, Minnie opened her eyes and winked at Ransom.
"Before you go all apeshit about us being here, remember you were the one who insisted we stay. You said you'd make it worth our while."
Ransom grinned as flashbacks started to roll in. And did I live up to my end of the bargain? Minnie rolled to her knees and stretched, giving the bed's other two occupants a show of her tanned, svelte form, impressive tits, and a pussy covered by a baby-soft thatch of golden hair.
"Damn straight you did, lover."
She pressed a swift kiss to Ransom's neck, then leaned over him, giving a lingering one to the receptive brunette before climbing over both of them.
"And then you insisted on us giving you a show. Haven't done that in a while, but I'm happy to report that Katie here is no longer a virgin when it comes to women."
Minnie winked at their shy bed companion.
"Isn't that right, sugar?"
Ransom was amused at the scarlet flush spreading all over Katie's body. Minnie kissed her again, this time more thoroughly. The other woman snaked her arms around her neck with a whimper, hungry for more. Minnie broke the kiss and grinned at Ransom.
"Who would have thought Chatham schoolteacher was an undercover freak for some girl-on-girl action, right?"
Ah. Now he remembered everything in vivid detail. The pounding increased. Both Ransom and Katie turned to enjoy the view of Minnie's trim backside as she went to answer the door, without a stitch of clothing on. She opened it, and Shakes almost hit her in the face with his raised fist.
"Fucking good morning to you too, Gomez."
"Holy shit, Minnie!" Lucas Shakes Gomez exclaimed, dropping his hand as he thoroughly eye-fucked her, zeroing in on her crotch with a smirk. "I knew you were a natural blonde."
"Yeah, well, you fucking act like one, asshole,"
she retorted, slugging the behemoth raven-haired biker in the shoulder. She sauntered away, deliberately adding an inviting switch to her hips for his benefit, Minnie was pissed that Shakes, in the 3 years that they'd known each other, was able to remain immune to her wiles and obvious assets.
Come on, Katie. Let's go and grab some breakfast.
The brunette turned back to Ransom with a hopeful smile. He steeled himself at her smitten expression.
I'd like to see you again. Should I leave my number? You can call if you want to, which I hope you will. Or maybe I can call you.
Giggling at Ransom's horrified look, Minnie slapped her hand over Katie's mouth and urged her out of bed.
Don't worry. I'll school her on your rules, baby.
I'd appreciate that, he muttered, grateful for her intervention. She sighed lustily and rumpled his hair.
But damn, can you really blame her?
The women gathered their clothes and quickly dressed. Embarrassed by her faux pas, Katie left without looking at either man. Minnie lingered to wrap her arms around Shake's waist. With a calculated look, she offered,
I'm free later if you want to swing by and finally see what you've been missing out on.
Chuckling quietly, he removed her arms and took a slight step back, covering his nose.
Damn, girl. At least brush the dick out of your mouth before you run around propositioning folks.
Unwilling to admit that his upteenth rejection stung as much as the first time, Minnie shoved him away from her.
Fuck you, Shakes. I didn't want to see your scrawny little dick anyway.
Not even if we were both wearing hazmat suits and God proclaimed you a reborn virgin, Minnie, Shakes returned, seriously. And my shit would only seem little to someone whose pussy has been stretched wider than the Grand Canyon.
Ransom waited until the women left to address his best friend.
The fuck, man, he chuckled. Why'd you have to go at Minnie like that? You've had a hard-on for her since she arrived, and I ain't talking about your dick, brother. What gives?
Shake's face reflected the disgust he felt.
That bitch is an opportunist, and you're giving her exactly what she wants by fucking with her. I hope you're the one providing the condoms. I bet she wouldn't hesitate to screw you to the wall in more ways than one if the opportunity presented itself.
Ransom swung his legs over the edge of the bed.
But that's all I'm doing with her. And shit, yeah, I'm the one handling the condoms. I'd never trust a female to do that.
Shakes relaxed.
As long as you ain't hitting shit raw is all I'm saying. Chicks these days can look like Mary Poppins and are more radioactive than Chernobyl between their thighs.
He laughed with his friend, but Ransom was savoring a memory. One of him being tangled up with Billy to the point that he didn't know where his limbs ended and hers began. It was the last time they'd made love, and Ransom intentionally went bareback. Knowing that he couldn't give her what they both wanted, he desperately wanted to leave something of himself behind. Ransom was partially ashamed to admit that he'd hoped to plant a seed to tie her to him permanently. It was a dick move, no lie, and one he wasn't particularly proud of. But still, that damn dream. That's all it was, though. He'd best remember it, too. Abruptly, he changed the subject.
What's on the agenda for today? Pop says we got 12 cars to load down. Our asses need to be at the shop pronto. Afterward, I thought I'd swing by the Inferno for lunch.
Shakes finished casually.
Motherfucker, you just want to sit your pretty ass up there and make goo-goo eyes at Lorelei. You need to cut that shit out before Marcus blows your fucking balls off.
Ransom direly warned his friend, trying to ignore the sharp pang of acknowledgement Marcus's association to Billy caused.
Why don't you come with me to make sure I'm on my best behavior?
Shakes wheedled. At Ransom's stoic look, he added,
Come on, man. It's been 5 months since you set foot in there. The place ain't the same without you, brother. Marcus and Lorelei ask about you every time I go in there. Why don't you come and put their minds at ease?
Although he'd known the older man long before Billy came into the picture, Ransom had avoided Marcus like the plague since he confessed his snake of a daughter skipped town without saying goodbye. As if Chatham wasn't small enough to begin with, now Ransom's free time was restricted to either Flex, the clubhouse, or one of his day trips, exploring. It was best for everyone as far as Ransom was concerned. He needed no extra reminders of Billy. As if you could ever forget her, his conscience taunted. Nah, I'm good. Ransom stood and stretched before grabbing a towel from a clean stack on his dresser, courtesy of Claudia. I'll see you at the shop.
Make sure you scrub real hard and wash all that random pussy off you.
You do know that if Tia Lucy wasn't my godmother and liked looking at your ugly mug, I'd fuck you up, right? Shakes snorted, but he didn't joke like he normally did.
Yo, for real. How long you gonna keep this shit up? So you got hit with some rock-bottom pussy. Big deal. Shake that shit.
Rock-bottom pussy. Ransom scoffed. What the fuck is that shit? Motherfucking shit that's so goddamn good you'll never recover from it, Shakes informed him slyly. It earned him 2 extra stiff middle fingers from Ransom. Maybe you just need to go find her. His voice trailed off at Ransom's closed-off expression and suddenly tense posture. The fuck I look like chasing after some broad, Shakes. She knew the score, and she made her choice. Now change the subject, 'cause this shit ain't up for discussion. You didn't exactly offer her an incentive to stay or continue the relationship, Shakes reminded him quietly, treading more cautiously in the face of Ransom's growing wrath. He raised his palms defensively when his friend's eyes darkened and flashed dangerously. I'm just saying that maybe things would have played out differently if you had. Like if you'd said, I want to see where this could go. Why would she hang around if there was nothing in it for her? Billy's a hell of a girl. She isn't like these other broads we're used to playing hard and fast, but she had hella spunk. Her name, spoken aloud, was the first time he'd heard it since she left months ago. It was an unexpected gunshot to his heart, and Ransom's pulse amped up reflexively. Huh. Used to be that Billy fell from his lips effortlessly, like a reverent prayer. Now it was a curse. His curse to bear for falling for her. Jesus Christ, you sound like one of those fucking Harlequin romances our moms used to have their noses buried in, asshole. Ransom mocked, lips twisting cynically. I didn't offer her shit because she doesn't belong here. She never did. Shakes gave him a doubtful glance. What makes you so sure? I don't know, man. She struck me as being pretty resilient. Given the chance, I bet Billy could have rolled with the punches. Viciously, Ransom kicked his boots out of his path, stubbing his toes painfully in the process, and they bounced against the wall. I'm going to be the next president of this club, and she's not club material. Maybe if shit was different, I'd have wanted more than a summer, but it ain't. So leave it the fuck alone, man. I'm good. Yeah, you just keep telling yourself that, Ransom. In the meantime, your self-destruction has been a ray of fucking sunshine to bask in. Disappointed in his best friend, Shakes changed the subject. I still can't believe Harley ghosted like that, and with Pitch, of all people. I haven't been real vocal on the subject, but with that shitbag by his side, you know they can't be up to any good. Like I don't fucking know that. He's a grown man. Let him stand on his own 2 feet. I was tired of cleaning up after his dumb ass anyway, Ransom snapped. He refused to dwell on being abandoned, not only by Billy, but his identical twin brother, too. He'd been so angry and resentful of his older brother's selfish and reckless ways. The toll of constantly watching out for Harley and cleaning up his messes had come to a head this past summer. The blow-up was vicious, and nothing brothers should ever have to go through. It was also necessary, as Harley's recklessness had cost Ransom the only girl he'd ever loved. Fuck. Love. If he ever got his hands on Cupid, he was going to choke the ruthless little asshole out. Love had him feeling as if he'd been hit with an incurable virus. Ransom would rather take a fatal bullet than experience this never-ending hellish vortex again. He shook his head, trying to ward off the onslaught of vivid memories that continuously tortured him. Per usual, Ransom was unsuccessful. Billy's laugh and smile, peeling her clothes away layer by layer, as if unwrapping the most precious gift, to reveal the treasure that was his alone. Long hours of lovemaking, so sweet, dirty, and gratifying, were enough to bring him to his knees and tears to his eyes. Ransom still remembered her fevered whispers of I love yous their last night together. Typical Billy. So loving and generous, even in the face of his rejection. In spite of it, and the hurt she had to be feeling, Billy had still given herself to Ransom selflessly, and like the bastard he was, he'd taken her selfishly, allowing her to spoil him with the words that at the time he couldn't reciprocate. She'd imprinted those 3 words on his soul in the heat of their passion, giving Ransom hope for a future that could never be for them. Yet the next morning, she was gone without a word to anyone but her father. Harley's doing what he thinks he has to do right now, which is look out for number 1, Ransom said tonelessly. Wherever he's at, I hope to God he hasn't become unhinged and has the sense to go his separate ways from Pitch. This bullshit is fucking with my family, causing added stress between my mother and Prez. Everything's changed, and we just need to push through and keep going. There's gotta be a light at the end of this fucking tunnel." Shakes pointed at Ransom's Nikon camera on the dresser. "Is this going with you? You've gotten really good at this shit." He picked up some black and white photos Ransom had taken in Albuquerque of the indigenous people and their adobe homes. His lengthy whistle was an admiration of the raw emotion and regal bearing of the tribes that Ransom had captured. "Brother, this stuff needs to be hanging in someone's office or gallery. Anything's better than lying in stacks around this joint." Photography was a passion of Ransom's. He'd taken electives on it in college, but hadn't really done anything with his skills until Billy arrived. She'd restored his inspiration, and he'd become obsessed with taking pictures of her, but had yet to capture her in stillness. It shouldn't have surprised Ransom. Billy was mercurial, sudden, and unpredictable. He developed tons of photos in his bathroom/darkroom that showcased her many sides: vulnerable, passionate, humorous, irritated, and seductive. When she left, he'd expected his interest to wane, but instead it gained momentum. Ransom spent his spare time taking covert photos of people around him, Chatham, and wherever else his bike took him. The camera didn't lie, and the truth could always be found through its lens. Ransom picked up his latest work that he developed yesterday. It was a candid black and white photo of his mother, Claudia, at their bonfire last week. She was stunning as always, yet, in this photo, Ransom had exposed her vulnerable side. Her pain, anger, resentment, and loneliness were all highlighted by the fire she stared broodingly into. What was also significant was that she stood on the outskirts of the large gathering and not at her rightful place by their Prez's side. Was her divisive stance deliberate? The tight lines at the corners of her moss eyes, identical to his, and her full mouth compressed into a taut line, were so out of character for his vivacious, affectionate mother that Ransom was compelled to capture her emotions to study at a later date. Something was going on with his parents, but Ransom had been so caught up in his own shit that he hadn't really noticed until last week. His mother hadn't left the compound, to his knowledge, in at least a month. The only time he'd really seen her was at the clubhouse, going through checklists and performing housekeeping inspections, or when Ransom stopped by the house and she made him a meal. Guess they'd both been too preoccupied with their own thoughts to make more than small talk. He planned to address it before leaving town. Ransom's instincts told him it had everything to do with Slade. He wasn't surprised. Everything revolved around that fucking asshole. Chapter 2. Slade Lawson's eyes flickered open. The last 5 months he'd been plagued by a restless sleep. Once a deep sleeper, he now awakened at the slightest noise or complete silence. This morning, it was the lack of aromas in clanging pots and pans that signaled he'd have to fend for himself for breakfast again, as well as lunch and dinner. Slade stared up at the ceiling, not bothering to turn his head to the right side of the bed. He already knew that the space Claudia, his wife of over 2 decades, had faithfully occupied, would be empty, as it had been for several months. Since discovering his extramarital dalliance, Claudia had checked out of her wifely duties. Publicly, she was still present and executing her duties as the head old lady, which included making sure the families were taken care of. The clubhouse had everything the MC needed, and keeping the house mice in line. But behind closed doors, it was an entirely different matter. Claudia refused to cook unless Ransom came over. She slept in their bed, but was always gone before Slade woke up. She had nothing to say to him, if it didn't pertain to the club, and avoided him whenever possible. Claudia conversed daily with Marnie regarding office matters at Lawson's Automotive and made her relay them to Slade. Gone was his passionate and affectionate wife, who was always ready to take his dick whenever and wherever her husband whipped it out. Ordinarily, Claudia couldn't get enough of him. Hell, there'd been numerous occasions when Slade wasn't even the one who initiated sex and had woken up to the voracious suction of Claudia's mouth around his cock while she deep-throated him. The entire time they'd known each other, Claudia had never let him walk out the door without first serving him a generous helping of pussy. Except when she was on the rag. Now she could barely stomach being in the same room with him, and was relieved when he left. His old lady also had a mouth on her and was outspoken when expressing herself. These days, Slade might as well have been living with a fucking mute. It didn't matter if he sweet-talked her, goaded, or attempted to instigate an argument. Claudia had nothing for him. She'd always treated him like a king, with her pampering and worshipping. But lately, all Slade felt like was a goddamn chump. He was short-tempered with his men, employees, and customers at Lawson's Automotive and Club Flex, causing people to avoid interactions with him if they could help it. Aside from Claudia, the only people who didn't give two shits about his surly behavior were his VP Blaze, his wife Lucy, their son Shakes, and Ransom. Harley wasn't around, but even if he was, the little weasel wouldn't be man enough to stand up to Slade. The cordless phone on the nightstand rang, and Slade rolled over and grabbed it.
Yeah. Just checking to see if you were still alive. That was a shitload of liquor you kicked back at Inferno last night. Your liver has to be on its deathbed the way you've been going at them bottles of Jimmy and Jack.
Blaze's voice was laced with concern for his oldest friend.
We got a shipment coming in this morning. You gonna be here in time or let the kid handle it? I'll be in. But if it gets there before I do, show Ransom the ropes. You hear back from Jackal yet?
Jackal was the president of the Immortals Northern California chapter. He'd reached out to Slade, requesting assistance with a security job. Their club had recently taken a hit with law enforcement, and at least 12 of its members were locked up. Other chapters were also stepping up to help out.
Yeah, he said whatever we could spare. I think it'll be a good experience for the youngster. Not to mention new pussy.
Blaze snorted his amusement.
Ransom has pretty much torn through everything around here like a fucking tornado that isn't nailed down by a cut, except the brothel. You coming to dinner tonight? Lucy is making baked spaghetti and meatballs and garlic bread. Shit, yeah, brother. If an extra plate ain't too much trouble and Lucy hasn't decided today is the day to poison me,
Slade half-joked.
Well, what the fuck did you think was gonna happen when you shitted all over her best friend?
Blaze snapped in his woman's defense.
Shit, man. They're practically sisters. Your kids are my kids and vice versa. This affects us all. Which is another reason why, again, you don't fuck around in your own backyard, Slade. Leave that shit on the road. It doesn't matter. Claudia's a fucking bloodhound. She always knows,
Slade muttered, throwing his arm over his eyes.
I could fuck a Martian on the moon and she'd find out as soon as I bust a nut. Then maybe you should just stop doing it,
Blaze growled, frustrated by his friend's cluelessness.
Eventually, women get tired of the bullshit. They either break, snap, or worse, become distant and leave your ass alone entirely. Do you know where your old lady's head is at right now?
Distance was what Slade was currently dealing with. All of this drama because he decided to treat some bitch to a charity fuck. Slade hadn't even bothered to learn her name. The only thing he knew was that she was a hot piece of snatch looking to add some MC cock to her pussy's resume. As Prez of the local MC, Slade felt it was his moral obligation to satisfy her. She'd practically devoured him with her lips, sucking on his dick while allowing Slade to fuck her bouncy tits until he treated her to a cum facial. He'd rewarded Diner Girl by flipping her on all fours and doing her up the ass. Was it really cheating if he didn't slide into the pussy? It was a meaningless way to pass the time while the carnival was packing up and forgotten as soon as he got off. Diner Girl was still twitching and jerking on his dick, while Slade was wondering if Claudia would make him a late-night snack when he arrived home. He decided to change the subject.
Tell Lucy I'd appreciate a home-cooked meal.
But Slade couldn't resist wistfully adding,
You know, Claudia makes a killer chopped Italian salad that would go great with it. Which is why she's still bringing it, Blaze cheerfully responded. Unlike you, she was invited. But I wasn't going to leave you to fend for yourself. Later, brother.
So now he was a fucking pity invite? Enraged, Slade grabbed his pillow and threw it across the room. It knocked their wedding picture on the dresser. Pity was not something he handled well. He needed to take a piss. Slade flung the covers back and went to relieve himself, brush his teeth, and shower before going to find his wife. As he walked down the hallway to the stairs, he truly noticed for the first time just how much time and effort Claudia spent turning their house into a home over the years. The hallway was lined with family photos, as well as club members and their families. Somehow Claudia had managed to capture a softer side of his brothers that was rarely demonstrated, as they had a ruthless reputation to uphold. The Immortals' family tree was steeped in iniquity, stemming from the long twisted root.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?